This morning, I'm looking forward to getting Mike Johnson reelected as Speaker, and I'd like to do it in the least dramatic way possible. It's time for everybody to get on the boat and start rowing. We were given a mandate by the American people to perform. So we have a very aggressive agenda that needs to be executed, and in order to do so, we have to have a Speaker. So I want to see this done sooner rather than later today.
And that, of course, is Congressman Derek Van Orton, a Navy SEAL, a veteran, and a guy who says he's not a politician, he's a statesman. And welcome to Friday. It's the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in one more day for my buddy Chris Plant. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh, do we have a lot of stuff happening today, beginning with the anticipated battle that Mike Johnson faces to return as Speaker of the House. There are a whole lot of speculators out there today, and a lot of folks predicting disaster, and a lot of folks saying, hold the phone just a minute. If we look at the betting odds, and I, for one, am a person who follows the poly-market betting odds, Mike Johnson has a 91% chance of getting elected as Speaker. And the vote is anticipated to happen around noon. We just spotted something during the break, and that was the Speaker wandering the halls of the Capitol and talking to a couple of reporters about what's at stake and what he faces. And we'll see if we can get some of his statements on here shortly. There are a lot of folks who believe this could take several votes about the speakership. One of the more predictable votes on this is Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky, a guy who does not hide his feelings on this battle. Massie was on One America News last night. It just happened to be the debut show of a guy who used to be in Congress, got elected again to serve the state of Florida, and then was nominated to be the Attorney General. Then he pulled out of that and resigned from his seat in Congress. Of course, I'm talking about Matt Gaetz. I happen to not be the biggest Matt Gaetz fan. I refer to him as Botox Bob. I'm like, enough already with the Botox. You're a young guy. Let's tone it down a little bit. But he launched a show last night on One America. And one of his first guests was Thomas Massie. And, of course, the subject of the election of Speaker of the House came up, and Massie was asked about it.
I am the one hell no. You know, they say there's up to 5 or 6 who may be voting no. You can count on me to be a no.
You can count on me to be a no. Now, Thomas Massie is a brilliant guy. I don't agree with everything he does or says, but we can afford a no. You can afford one no. You can't afford a whole bunch of no's, and therein lies the problem. If you have people voting no, it means that this could go into one of those lengthy weekends of voting over and over again. Over at CNN, their numbers guy, Harry Enton, was busy telling everybody what could happen, what might happen. Here are the situations. Cut 3, please, Michael.
Look, this is the simple math, right? GOP reps can sink Johnson's speaker bid. In scenario 1, if just 2 vote against him, if just 2 Republican representatives vote against him, assuming, of course, 434 members vote and no Democrats vote for Johnson, which is what we expect, if just 2 Republicans vote against him, he doesn't win the speakership. How about scenario 2? If 1 votes against him and then 2 abstain, i.e. vote present, then that 2 would deny Johnson the speakership.
So if there are abstentions or people who vote present, that screws things up as well. It's a very unique situation, historic, in fact. There has not been a narrow majority, a closeness here at this level since 1917, and Enton broke that down too.
Look, we're dealing with a historically narrow majority, the narrowest going into a speaker's vote this early in the Congress since 1917. And the bottom line is the math is just so tight. Just a few Republicans can throw this entire situation into gosh darn chaos.
Oh, not the gosh darn chaos. You watch your language, little mister. We're going to have to get out the congressional soap and wash our mouth out in this. Harry Enton lavishing us with his analysis on CNN, and he went back to the Thomas Massie vote as well.
Some Republicans who may not vote for Johnson, well, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, he is a hell no, I'm voting for Johnson, at least on that first ballot. How about serious qualms? Remember, then we just need either one more Republican to vote against or two to vote president, that is abstain. And look at this, Chip Roy of Texas, and then, of course, Victoria Sparks of the great state of Indiana. And keep in mind, both of these folks didn't vote for Kevin McCarthy. You mentioned that 15-vote thing. They didn't vote for Kevin McCarthy on 5 or more ballots in January of 2023. So the idea that these two would throw the speakership race into a complete mess, well, there's some real history of that going on here.
It sounds like they're excited about chaos. Although I am curious as why Enton would say, gosh darn chaos, but he's okay to say hell no. He toned down the GD chaos, but he didn't dial back. He didn't say heck no. He could have said heck no, but he didn't. One more from Harry Enton, because he's trying to do a little bit of speculating himself, like the poly market folks, on the chances of Johnson retaining the speakership.
Here's the thing to keep in mind. This is the chance that Mike Johnson wins the speakership, and this is per an average of the betting markets. On the first ballot, it's 35%. So that's south of 50, right? Although, really wouldn't be surprising. 1 in 3 things happen all the time. But here's the key thing. Just because he loses on the first ballot doesn't mean he won't win on the second ballot, third ballot, fourth ballot, etc. At some point that Johnson wins, it's 90%. Now, again, that's not 100%, but it's far more likely than not. So just because if Johnson loses on the first ballot, it doesn't mean that he won't eventually get it. At this point, that seems like the most likely possibility.
It was my understanding there was to be no math, but here we are. It does look like everyone, both the poly market betting odds and even the CNN numbers guy, Harry Enton, think it's a 90 to 91% shot that Johnson retains the speakership. Does it happen in one vote? Maybe not. But what did Speaker Johnson have to say about it as he walked into the halls of Congress earlier today?
My simple message to my colleagues is make suggestions about process improvements. We're open to that at all times, but I don't make deals with anyone. There's no quid pro quo here. I don't do anything in exchange for a vote.
What he said in that echo-riddled hall was, I don't make deals with anyone for my vote, meaning I am who I am. He did the Popeye thing. I'm not making deals, so Chip Roy's not getting a deal. Victoria Sparks isn't getting a deal. Thomas Massie isn't even going to be offered a deal because he's been a hell no. I think he also said something about pulling his fingernails out, and you still wouldn't get him to change his vote. But it's going to be interesting. I do believe that Donald Trump, even though we are being told the president-elect is not making calls to people, he may not be making calls. But possibly people very close to Mr. Trump are making some phone calls, if you will, whipping the vote to try and make sure there is a Speaker of the House elected today. The other one who had to come back for this, and she has just returned, is Nancy Pelosi. Remember, she's been sidelined after the accident. She was in the international stair diving competition a couple of weeks ago and took a tumble in the first round and fell down a flight of marble stairs, which that's not good for a young person. But when you're 84 years old and you fall down a flight of marble stairs, it is particularly tough. Now, we have not heard whether or not Nancy Pelosi took that tumble because the hip broke or the hip broke because she took the tumble. The medical experts I've talked to said it's likely that she tumbled when the hip broke. And then she was flown to an American hospital, military hospital elsewhere, and had a hip replacement surgery, which is fairly standard operating procedure, even for people of Pelosi's advanced age. And they usually recover pretty well. It's a fast operation and a faster recovery, different than a knee. But Pelosi was on a plane yesterday and decided to share her excitement with us that she is, in fact, returning to Washington, D.C.
Hi, it's Nancy. I'm on my way to Washington to proudly represent the people of San Francisco in Congress. I'm honored to do so, to share our San Francisco values. Thank you for giving me that honor.
Our San Francisco values. I, for one, could not be less happy about anyone sharing their San Francisco values. And it looks like Pelosi may have got a little more Botox. She may have found the supply of Botox Bob. It looks like there is not a wrinkle on that forehead. And there appears to be a unique smoothness not found on 84-year-olds in the cheeks as well. The cheeks on the face. God forbid we have a vision of the others. But Pelosi is back, and she has to be back. They need all the Democrats to vote against Johnson, and they will, because that's how they operate. That's how they roll. They vote together in lockstep. As it were, Pelosi may not be the speaker anymore, but she still pulls the strings. You better believe it. I'm thinking this is going to happen. I'm thinking that Speaker Johnson will be the speaker again by the end of the day. It may not happen on the first vote, but I think they'll do a little horse trading, a little horn swaggling, a little deal making. What do you think? 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. Wayne is in Jefferson, Maryland. Wayne, welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
Dr. Opelka, it's good to see you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
This morning,
yeah?
I was watching Riley this morning win against live against Djokovic. It was an awesome display of serving. Awesome display.
Thank you for that. Yes, our nephew Riley Opelka beat Novak Djokovic this morning in Brisbane, Australia. It was before dawn, actually just after dawn here on the East Coast, and it was the first time he's played him, and it was particularly satisfying to watch after he's been out from injury. But thank you for recognizing that. He's an incredible kid, and I've posted a link to the interview after the match, which I think is more telling than actually the match itself. But thank you, Wayne. You have a thought on the speaker vote today?
Yes, sir. As you remember, I was a House staffer for many years, even worked on the Appropriations Committee for a while. I will merely say that this is not a time for the Republicans to go home and say, well, I things have got to be done my way or the highway. We've got to retain the presidency, and if we don't have Speaker, we're not going to have a vote on certification on Monday. So it's that simple. Everybody's got to stand in line now. If they want to negotiate with anything, well, they can come back and say, well, we won't require 9 votes now to vacate.
To challenge?
We'll maybe hold 3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to concede something.
Well, I do believe that in the end it will shake out. And from your perspective as having been there, that's comforting to hear, because I think the drama, we're all a little tired of the drama at this point, Wayne. I've had enough drama for a year already. I don't need any more drama. After the first 2 days of the year, I'm reached my capacity for drama. I'd like to get back to regular order. I'd like to get the House, the Senate, and the presidency and the Supreme Court all on the same path and moving forward. And I'm kind of buoyed by your statement here, so that's good news. I thank you for that, Wayne. All righty. Got to take a break here. The phone number, as always, 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. It's Opelka in for Plant on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at WashingtonTimes.com/Chris.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in for my buddy Chris Plant. Today he returns on Monday, and I'm sure he will be loaded for bear I want to continue on the speaker spin, but I was just looking at a story, something that CNN was reporting, and they're saying that they have a source that says the terrorist in New Orleans was not directed by anyone outside of the U.S. So the whole fact that he was radicalized and joined ISIS last summer and had an ISIS flag on the back of his truck, that's not from outside of the country? Really? CNN, we were just talking about how the mainstream media has a chance to get its act back together. What a massive fail. Massive fail. All right, I want to grab a couple of phone lines here. Ellen is calling from Falls Church, Virginia. Hello, Ellen. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Mike. How are you? I'm calling to weigh in on the speaker. I think that Thomas Massie is the only one of that lot that's worth leading us in this Congress here. He's the only true constitutionalist in the what's now largely a rhino party. Everybody else there is a rhino, neocon who wants to keep us in these foreign wars. He's the only one, practically the only one in that lot who's not beholden to Israel and the AIPAC lobby and, getting us more and more money to Ukraine. So I hope we prevail. I know it's important to get President Trump certified on Monday, but this is worth the fight. This is really worth the fight.
Well, I'm a big fan of Thomas Massie. I don't know if speakership is the right spot for him, but I'm a huge fan of his. I've sat and talked with him in his office on a couple of occasions, and I like the guy as a politician and as a statesman, and I know he represents the people of his district in Kentucky quite well. But I also know he's a man of principle, and he won't bend on the deficit. He won't bend on issues like what he considers to be an obscene amount of money that we're sending to other countries and not getting what we want from it. So while I understand, I don't know if that's reality, Ellen. I hear what you're saying. I just don't know if there's a snowball's chance in Washington's hell that could happen. But he's a good man.
We can pray, and he's too principled. He's too honest for that swamp. But we got to do better than Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson's just a rhino neocon, and we got to do better than that. So just let's pray that we get somebody that can at least hold true to some sort of modicum of constitutional principles.
Well, we're going to know very soon. But thank you, Ellen. Appreciate you being there. I don't have time to get to Eddie. I promise you we'll get back to these. I do want to talk more about what we learned yesterday as it relates to the terror attack in New Orleans and the exploding Tesla out in Las Vegas. A couple of weird and disturbing things. We'll try and get to all of them. It's Mike Opelka. That's me. I'm in for Chris Plant right here on the Chris Plant Show. It is the Chris Plant Show, and it's Friday. Friday-luia to you. Mike Opelka, that's me, in for my buddy Chris Plant. He returns on Monday after his holiday break. We are trying to get to everything. There's just so much today. With the vote for speaker at noon coming up. And just saw something with Jim Jordan. We're going to try and grab that. Jim Jordan is stopping and talking to reporters. It's always difficult in the halls of Congress because it's all marble. And it sounds like you're in an old grammar school bathroom, all tiled walls everywhere, and the sound's bouncing off the walls. We will get to this story about the terror attack in New Orleans because there's some interesting things that popped up about that and about the Las Vegas attack, the exploding Tesla. Although the Tesla didn't explode, as Elon Musk pointed out, the battery remained intact, the tires didn't blow up, and the structure of the Cybertruck seems to have blunted some of the explosion And the windows and the doors of the Trump building did not shatter, which is really unusual in a big blast. We'll get back to that. But I was talking about the speaker vote. And the predictive markets, the betting markets, are showing 91% chance that Johnson stays in his post. We shall see. We shall see. But Eddie hung on through the break. So let's take one more quick call on this topic. Eddie in Alexandria, Virginia. Hello, Eddie. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Mike. How you doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. Eddie, when do we stop saying Happy New Year? Because we're going to go through the weekend now. And there's going to be people you haven't seen. Is there a time limit on when we're supposed to stop saying Happy New Year?
I guess when it stops being so tumultuous, that's probably a good time to put the brakes on it.
Oh, that's it. That's a good point. When the drama stops, we can stop.
Will it ever stop? I mean, I just turned 61, and I'm shaking my head ruefully, just going, can the Republicans, can they take after the Democrats, get into line, and make a seamless transition? I would love Jim Jordan, obviously, but it's just going to disrupt everything. Why can't they get their act together? Honestly, I voted for Reagan. That was my first vote back in, I think it was 1980, and it's just they're just going to screw up the midterm elections and. They just got to. Why can't they just get in line? It's just amazing to me. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of. Even though the tent has gotten bigger, we have a lot of individuals inside the GOP as opposed to a lot of the lemmings that are inside of the Democrat tent. And when you have that, they use the expression, it's like herding cats, and it is difficult. And a lot of them are there because they're big personalities who convince voters to vote for them, and they want to make sure their voice is heard. Even they're only one of 435 votes inside that chamber. So it's a difficult task. Now, Eddie, I heard this from several people. It's kind of funny, who have said, why don't they just elect Trump the speaker for the next 17 days? Because he could be, it doesn't have to be a member of Congress. It could be anybody could be Speaker of the House, which would be kind of funny.
I'll wrap up, but I just wanted to remind the wonderful audience out there, remember, it was the Democrats that locked the doors. Do you remember that time? When they took the vote, locked out all the Republicans?
Oh, they locked the doors. I can go way back to the negotiations on Obamacare. They locked the doors to keep the media out. They locked the doors. We had the guy who got voted out who set off the fire alarm. The Democrats have done some pretty extreme things. So it would be nice to see extreme party unity to at least get Donald Trump certified as the president next Monday, and that is one of the things that has to happen here. We'll see. We'll see. What is your are you betting it's going to happen, Eddie, today? Because I am.
I think it's going to go a couple of rounds, but they'll do all the backdoor. What do you need for the vote? It's the same old thing. I always think of the Who, that song, saying, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's the same process.
Won't get fooled again. Yeah, exactly. Classic Who. We won't get fooled again, but maybe we will. We'll see. I think it's going to get done today. You bring up a good point. It could be a couple of rounds of voting. Either way, I will guarantee you everybody on the network level is set to be in their studios through the day. And D.C. and the Maryland area, Virginia area, are facing some snow. So this could be an interesting evening, Eddie. Buckle up, be ready, and we'll all get our popcorn and watch it together. Thank you, buddy. I did want to get to something that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. The discussion that happened after the press conference from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and Sheriff Kevin McMahill was his name. he came out yesterday to give us a briefing on the exploding Cybertruck in front of the Trump building. Now, the building, I believe, is still the Cybertruck explosion made that a crime scene, and that building has been closed now and evacuated for several days. So that's costing Donald Trump some money. The Trump business is being hit there. But one of the interesting things here is what we were told yesterday in the press briefing. And there are some things that had me scratching my head when I was listening to it. So let me wind this back a little bit to the explanation that was shared with us.
Our subject is 37-year-old Matthew Livelsberger. He's of Colorado Springs, Colorado, born July 22nd of 1987. Now, as you'll see here on a picture of his driver's license, the question really still remains for me, and I know that there's a lot of you folks in the media that are identifying this person as the person in our vehicle. As I mentioned to you already, his body is burnt beyond recognition, and I do still not have confirmation 100% that that is the individual that was inside of our vehicle.
So the body inside the vehicle was burned beyond recognition. Now, are we going to get DNA results? Because I'm sure they're probably going to have DNA access to what was left of the body. The body was burned beyond recognition. And then his identification didn't burn up. His body burned up so badly, and I think some of the firearms that were inside the vehicle burned up so badly. But we have his ID. What are we making these IDs out of? What are we making the passports out of? That seems to be a little bizarre.
And so, as I'm calling it now, the subject or person of interest, I will not come back until I have the confirmation through DNA or medical records that this is indeed, in fact, the subject inside of the vehicle.
I agree. Yes, let's do that. But meanwhile, the rest of social media and some parts of the mainstream media have already dug into Matthew Livelsberger's background and found girlfriends, ex-wives, history of this guy as well. And here is the sheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department saying, we don't know yet, just a person of interest.
Now, further complicating this identification of this individual, we also discovered through the coroner's office that the individual had sustained a gunshot wound to the head prior to the detonation of the vehicle.
Whoa. Gunshot wound to the head before the vehicle blew up. Does that make sense to anybody? He shot himself, or somebody shot him in the head, and then the vehicle blew up? This is confusing to me. And there also apparently was a substantial handgun inside this car, a Desert Eagle, which is a .50 caliber handgun. We refer to it as a hand cannon. It is a big gun. I don't know how you shoot yourself in the head and still have it anywhere near you, because the kick on that is ridiculous. You have to two-hand that firearm when you shoot it. I'm just wondering about that. Now, there are some interesting theories popping out there saying, well, the Tesla cars and trucks, they do have the capacity to drive themselves. They do have the complete autopilot function. Was this guy deceased before the car pulled up in front of the Trump Tower? You do have to have your hands on the wheel when you're driving in self-driving mode. They have to be in contact with it. So one could assume that a deceased body could have the hands connected to the wheel, and maybe that thing blew up. I don't believe all of this is the full story. Here's the other weird part about it. This guy rented this truck in Denver, Colorado, and drove it from Denver down to Las Vegas. 750 miles, give or take, depending on where he started. But we know it is 750 miles, roughly, from Denver to Las Vegas. He stopped to charge the Cybertruck 8 different times. And we know this because every time you plug in one of these cars, one of these electric vehicles, they connect to the network and it registers which car, because that's how they know how to charge you. When you're charging your car, when you're recharging your battery at a supercharger, it is billed to you based on how many miles you put on the car, what percentage of the battery is required. So he stopped 8 times. 8 times over 750 miles. That's a real bad story for electric vehicles. If you have to stop less than every 100 miles, I'm sorry, I fill up my internal combustion engine and I drive anywhere between 250 and 400 miles, depending on, highway or city traffic. This guy stopped 8 times to charge his vehicle, stopped and plugged it in. That's bizarre. That doesn't make sense to me. And if something doesn't make sense, it's probably got some shadiness to it. Now, let's see if there's a little more here.
One of the handguns was found at his feet inside of the vehicle. Obviously, in how we're trying to identify him, and I'm feeling comfortable to give you this information, is a tremendous amount of substantial evidence to include he rented the Turo vehicle. There are 2 tattoos, one of which was on the stomach and one of which is on the arm, that we can see bits and pieces of it as in comparison to what it is that we now know he had on his body. That has given us a lot of confidence that this is, in fact, the same person. As well as the clearly obvious, which is the credit cards, the military identification, the passport. And then furthermore, as you'll see here in just a very short period of time, we tracked his movements from Colorado to Las Vegas, and in a number of the photographs that we were able to determine, he was the individual that was driving the vehicle. And also, I'd like to iterate this point to you. We still have only ever seen him in this vehicle, and we're not aware of any other subjects involved in this particular case.
So, lone wolf? He opened it up by telling us that we couldn't conclusively identify Leibelsberger as the body in the car, and then he closed it by saying, "Yeah, but these tattoos, they feel like a real story is being told. Like that's him. We've confirmed it." And on the other side of the coin, we're also now being told that the New Orleans terrorist, and that's what we're referring to this guy as, that he now is being looked at as a lone wolf. I wonder where this is going. I really do. We'll get to your calls just around the corner. There is more information I want to share with you about the New Orleans killer's home. The whole thing stinks, and we need transparency. We'll dive a little bit deeper just around the corner. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show. It is the Chris Plant Show, Friday. Friday, hallelujah to you. Mike Opelka in for Chris. He returns on Monday, and just looking over a piece on broadandliberty.com from my friend Guy Shiraki. The headline tells you the whole story, but you should read it anyway. Republicans will learn that governing is harder than winning. That's true. That's true. You only have to win the election once. You have to govern every day. And we're talking about that as it relates to the speaker's race that's coming up. We'll get back to that. But we're in the middle of talking about the terrorist in New Orleans and the guy that blowed up his Cybertruck, allegedly, in Las Vegas. And Rachel held on during the break. Rachel, thanks for hanging on. You have a take on this, or you have something you want to mention regarding the New Orleans killer?
Yes, sir. I don't know if you've seen it. You can go to Twitter or X and see it. There is video of a reporter in yoga pants and a fuzzy jacket walking through the New Orleans terrorist home, less than 2 days after this happened. She's walking through. There's mail still on the wall. There's a Quran left open. There's piles of stuff that hasn't even been gone through.
Here's the story, and this is I'm glad you picked up on this. I'm glad you watched it. The young lady is named Jenny Terr, and we have followed Jenny through her career as a budding journalist. She worked at the Daily Caller News Foundation for years and did great work covering the border and everything that was going on at the border. And the New York Post picked her up. And Jenny is based in Houston. So when the New Orleans killer was discovered to have come from Houston, she found the address and got there hours before the FBI did. And we assumed the FBI was trying to get a search warrant, which they did, and they blew open the door and they went through it. But the video of Jenny Terr walking through this home, and there's furniture everywhere. There are little workstations the guy had set up in his home that appear to be where he was making the bombs, the improvised explosive devices. And as you said, there is a Quran that's open to, so I don't know what the verse is that's there, but it's 2 minutes of really fascinating video. I will repost the link to it. Let me see if I can get the last minute here of it.
Bathroom. This seems to be some sort of workspace, again, with other chemicals here. The light's still on. Some kind of station set up here. We're not really sure what that was for.
It's very tidy, and it looks like a very precise workspace for building something. There's a soldering iron. There's all kinds of little tools around.
In, what we can assume was also a bedroom. You can see clothes left here, and just a sign that someone was here up until those last few moments when neighbors said he left just before the New Year's holiday, saying he was done with his lease. It was up, and he was on his way to New Orleans.
And he was moving into a furnished apartment. This guy left behind everything. He obviously wasn't moving. He obviously knew he was headed to taking himself out. At least that's what it looks like to me. This is amazing on two fronts, just because it's so close to the actual event. But why isn't this a crime scene that has been secured? I'm a big fan of Jenny and the work she does, but how is the media allowed to rummage through this space so close to the actual event? Has all the evidence been taken out? Has everything been collected? Doesn't make sense. It's Opelka in for Plant.